Hello, fifth grade. How are you all today? I hope you are enjoying this beautiful weather that we've been having. It's been gorgeous, and I hope that you're having an opportunity to get outside and to just enjoy it. No humidity, sunny. It's just been great. I have just enjoyed it a lot. Today, we're going to talk about our scripture reading for this week, and it's one of my favorite scriptures of all time. It is about weddings, and I don't know about you, but I really love a good wedding. It's just such a joyful occasion. It's the flowers, just the ceremony, the reception, the dancing, the food. It's fun, it's festive, and I really enjoy going to weddings. Um, this scripture is in John chapter 2. I'm going to read it with you and to you, and then we'll talk about it a little bit, okay? On the third day, there was a wedding at Cana in Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Jesus was also invited to the wedding with his disciples. When the wine ran out, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." And Jesus said to her, "Woman, what does that have to do with me? My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Now there were 6 stone water jars there for the Jewish rites of purification, each holding 20 to 30 gallons. Jesus said to the servants, "Fill the jars with water," and they filled them up to the brim. And he said to them, "Now draw some out and take it to the master of the feast." So they took it. When the master of the feast tasted the water, now become wine, and did not know where it came from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew, the master of the feast called the bridegroom and said to him, "Everyone serves the good wine first, and when people have drunk freely, then the poor wine. But you have kept the good wine until now." This, the first of his signs, Jesus did at Cana in Galilee, and manifested his glory, and his disciples followed him. Well, I think this is very interesting here at the end where we read that this was the first of his signs. So that indicates to us that Jesus is going to have a lot more signs, right? And we might want to ask ourselves, well, what do they mean by signs? Well, we know what a sign is, don't we? A sign can tell us which way to go. If we're driving down the freeway and we need to exit on a particular road, it says exit Kingwood Drive or North Park or Hamlin Road. It shows us the way to go. Signs tell us things, right? Signs tell us whether to go into this door for the women's bathroom or this door for a man for the men's bathroom. Signs tell us to go to stop when we're driving and there's a stop sign. So signs are there to point the way. And Jesus is going to point the way for people. And you may want to say, well, what is he going to point the way to? Well, first of all, the people have been promised a Messiah, right? For a long time, they've been waiting for somebody to deliver them. They knew that when Adam and Eve ate from the garden, ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil in the garden, that they disobeyed God. And at that point, they were cast out of the garden, and God knew at that point that he couldn't be separated from them forever. He was going to provide a way to bridge that gap, to let humanity return to him. And so he promised that out of the seed of Abraham would come a deliverer, a savior. So it had been 2,000 years and they had been waiting and watching. Well, now we see that Jesus has come. He's the Messiah, but will they believe him? Will they believe that he's the Son of God? Well, he's going to show them many signs that yes, indeed, he is the Son of God. He's also going to show them many signs, and these signs are going to be used to point to them the direction in which they should go, how they should live their lives, how they should act, what they should do. So the first of these he does at a wedding in Cana. So we're going to talk a little bit more about this. I think it's interesting that when we read the very first line, it says, on the third day there was a wedding at Cana. Well, this week we just celebrated on Sunday Easter, didn't we? What were we celebrating? We were celebrating Jesus rising from the dead. And it happened on what day? On the third day. On the third day, Jesus rose from the dead. I find that very interesting that God shows us in His Word so many signs, so many clues about who He is and what He is up to. Remember, we talked about echoes in the New Testament from the Old. It always brings us back to something. Well, here we are hearing, it's almost like this is going to be the echo after Jesus rises from the dead. They can go back and say, oh gosh, on the third day there was a wedding. God puts these things in there for us to really ponder, for us to think about. They're important. When we see things that are a connection to something, we want to stop and ponder and think about it. So we see that the mother of Jesus was at the wedding, and Jesus was also invited with his disciples. So at these village weddings, they were a people who really enjoyed the fellowship and community with everyone. So they would invite the whole village to the wedding. It was a big affair. They just had a wonderful festive time, and many times it lasted for several days. And so Jesus and his mother were invited, and Jesus brought his disciples with him. But wine was gone. There were so many people, I guess they drank it all. And so this could be very embarrassing for the bridegroom who was hosting the wedding feast. It could be very embarrassing for him and his family that they had invited all these people and they ran out of food. I remember one time I had invited a friend of mine over for lunch with her kids. Well, she had 5 kids and I had 3. And I guess I just wasn't thinking that maybe some of her boys would eat more than one sandwich. I had a whole loaf of bread, but I ran out of bread. Some of the boys ate 2 sandwiches, and I was so embarrassed that I didn't have enough bread to feed them. So when you invite people over, you want to show hospitality, you want to have enough food. So I'm sure it would be very embarrassing for the bridegroom and his family if they ran out of wine. So Mary says to Jesus, she says they have no wine, but Jesus kind of gets a little stern with her, and he says, woman, what does this have to do with me? My hour has not yet come. Well, remember, he was such a unique person. He was the Son of God, and he's also the Son of Man. So Mary, even though he was her son, he was also the Son of God. So he kind of establishes himself there in this firm response, and he says, woman, what does this have to do with me? In other words, I think he's telling her that he is the Son of God, and that he should also be respected for that. But his mother just says to the servants, do whatever he tells you. I think she knows that he's going to have compassion on the bridegroom. She knows who he is. And so the next thing we read is that there were 6 stone water jars there. Now, these jars were there for, so it says that these jars were there for the Jewish rites of purification. And you might want to know what that is. It's simply just hand washing. They had to purify themselves before every meal, and that was part of their law. Part of the law of Moses was they had to wash their hands before they ate. Well, we'll come to see that so many of the religious leaders took these laws and they just made them almost bigger than life, in that it wasn't good enough just to wash your hands with a little bit of water. The more water you used, the more you washed your hands, the holier you were supposed to be. They just were getting it a little out of kilter. And so they had these jars that could hold 20 or 30 gallons of water. Now you think about a gallon of milk in your refrigerator, 20 or 30 of those. So the jars were pretty big, right? So Jesus tells the servants, go ahead and fill those with water. So they fill them to the brim, right? They fill it up to the brim. So he then says to them, now draw some out and take it to the master of the feast. Well, I don't want you to get confused here. The master of the feast is not the same as the bridegroom. The master of the feast was maybe like a local priest or a local dignitary or somebody who was over officiating the feast. Maybe he was going to bring the prayer. Anyway, he was kind of an important person. So he takes the wine that Jesus had told the servants to go give to him, and he tastes it, and he said, this is amazing. This is better wine than what we had at the beginning. And he says, everybody that I know serves the good wine first. And then when people have drunk freely, then they give him the poor wine. But he tells the bridegroom, you have kept the good wine until now. So that honors the bridegroom. This wine was so delicious. It was extraordinary. It was the best wine. And he didn't serve it first. He waited to serve it till the end. I think it's because a lot of people would maybe expect to drink the best wine. They could their mouths hadn't had any wine in it yet, so their taste buds were very alert, and they would taste the good wine first, and then after their taste buds maybe got a little dull from drinking and from eating, then they may not notice when the family would bring out like maybe the cheaper wine. He said that was a commonality back then. People, that's what they did because the people wouldn't know the difference. But Jesus doesn't do that. He creates excellent wine, and it is a compliment to the bridegroom because this person who's invited, this master of the feast, says, oh my gosh, this is really great wine, and it's served later. So what can we learn from this? So Jesus, let me back up a minute and say that Jesus wasn't quite ready. It says, my hour has not yet come. So he wasn't quite ready to do a miracle, but his compassion overwhelmed him, and he decided to do this miracle for the bridegroom and his family because he felt that they would be embarrassed if they ran out of wine. So we can learn from this story that, Jesus has compassion for those in need. He hears, he sees, and he acts on behalf of those in need. We can also see that Jesus transforms things. He takes ordinary things like water and he makes it extraordinary and the best wine ever. Jesus can do that with people. He takes ordinary people, and when they serve him and when they come to him and desire to be a part of his kingdom, he can do extraordinary things in their hearts. He can give them an abundance of love for others. He can help them become his hands and feet on earth. He transforms us. I know you all have probably heard of or seen that movie Transformers, where something is taken, a car, and is taken in and changed into a robot of some sort. Well, that's what transformation is. It's taking something and changing it. And Jesus transforms our hearts. He transforms our lives. He takes sometimes hearts that are maybe mean and cruel, and when he enters them, he changes them into kind, loving hearts, people who have maybe patience towards others. So Jesus tells the servants what to do and based on their obedience, many people are blessed. I think the message is for us is we need to listen to see what Jesus is telling us to do so that we can be transformed and changed, but also so we can be part of a blessing for others, right? And to others. What is he telling us right now to do? Is he telling us perhaps to be patient in this time where we would really like to see our friends and we'd like to be done with this quarantine business? Is he telling us to be kind to our siblings when maybe we have been living in close quarters or with our parents and our siblings and we're getting on each other's nerves? Is he telling us to be maybe more patient and kind with them and to be more loving? Is he telling us not to fear because we don't know what's going on? This is a whole new thing for us. Is he telling us peace? I give you peace. Listen to me. I am in charge and in control of all things. So what does he want to change in our hearts? Let's listen to him. Let's see that he has a great effect on our lives, just as he had a great effect on the water, changing it to something extraordinary. He can have a great effect on our lives. He can fill us up to overflowing with whatever it is we're lacking, whatever it is we've run out of, whether it's patience, whether it's love, whether we've just run out of peace. He can give it to us. We just have to listen, and then we have to do what he tells us to do. All right, so let's now go over to our questions, and we'll quickly go through these. I think they were fairly easy this week, but let's just see what we have. To what were Jesus and his mother invited? Jesus and his mother were invited to a wedding in Cana in Galilee. What did the wedding host run out of? The wedding host ran out of wine. What did Mary ask of Jesus? She came over to him and told him they had no wine. She knew he could help. What did Jesus command the servants to do? After Mary told them to do whatever he asks you to do, Jesus told them to fill the jars used for purification practices with water. How did Jesus' miraculous wine compare with the wine that he had been served before they ran out? It was far better than what they had been drinking. Why was the best wine usually served first? It was usually served first because the people could be impressed by the flavor. After they had a few glasses, they may not have noticed as much, so the host would then switch it out for cheaper wine. Jesus gives the best always. So, I talked a little bit about also the Last Supper and how Jesus talked about the blood that was going to be spilled at the cross, and maybe even this was one of those cues, these foreshadowings of things to come later at the cross, the fact that the water turning into wine could be hinting at that. And then I asked you to write a prayer of thanksgiving in your journals to God for providing for all of your needs. I really like this story. I love the fact that Jesus is going to show the people signs of who he is. The disciples saw this miracle and their faith was strengthened when they saw him working. And just like the disciples, our faith can be strengthened when we see him working. And we can see him working when we listen, when we obey, and when we follow him. And he will work through us to be a blessing to others. And that will strengthen our faith. I'll be praying for you this week. I hope you spend some time with God in his word and in prayer and jotting some things down in your journal. I really miss you, but I have peace in my heart that we will all get through this and be together again soon, and that we will rejoice just like they did at the wedding feast to see each other. So take care, hang in there, email me with any questions you may have, and have a great weekend.